I have often been asked this question about how long I'm going to stay here and whether I'm going to stay here permanently. And it's a complicated one. It's not easy to answer this. There are several things that you have to consider. Now, for most people, this dream of traveling around the world, seeing all these places like we have, it all looks good. People come back, listen to your stories about places you've been, things you've experienced. And it is. And I've done exactly the same thing when I was younger, listened to other people who've traveled. But there is a price to pay. There is a balance. Everything is not how it seems. So in this video, I'm going to explore several of these avenues. And then you may have a clearer understanding. Our story begins in 2007. 2006 towards 2007. I packed my job in when I was in the UK and decided that I would move here for a couple of years. That was the intended plan. A couple of years. Nearly 15 years later, I'm still here. Now, the plan was to spend a few years and then return back to the UK, get back into the job, and then just carry on life. But what the attraction was here is the euphoria for the first 6 or 7 months or the first year. New a place, you don't speak the language, you don't understand any of the writing, you depend on other people because of the language barrier. Not only do you leave your job, you pack your job in and you leave what is familiar to you, that you go to a complete different place. I would say it does take a lot of balls to be able to just, to go and move somewhere, but to go and move somewhere you don't understand, half the things that are going on. I lived in an apartment for the first time ever in my life that I lived in an apartment, or as we would call a flat. High above the ground, no garden, completely different. You work, you pay your taxes, you do all the other stuff, you improve on your language, your understanding, you understand the culture after about, I would say, the first year. Second year, you go through a sort of a different periods of time. So you have the honeymoon period, which is the first 6 months of being here. And then that wears off, and then you go through a bit of a comparison time, which is you always compare everything to the UK, and they don't do this here and we don't do that here, and then you go through a bit of a period of time where you resent the smallest things will start you off, especially the driving. When I first arrived here, I couldn't drive here because I never had a license. Was that a good thing? Then you pass that stage. By about the second year, most people either leave and they just go back home, because 2 years for most people is the limit that you can put up with. It depends on the individual, depends on what you're made of, whether you can tolerate or wherever you lay your hat, basically. So we went for the period of resentment, wanted to leave, wasn't that keen. Everything was a problem with people, irritated by every little thing. And then that passes. And then the final stage is, what would we call that? We would call that the sort of the settlement stage, where you either have been ground down by everything and you just sort of give up and plod on, or you just embrace everything that is new to you. So that's what I did. I just embraced everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, got our own place here. We've got a car, got a driving license, jobs, and live a very comfortable life here. Now, the question, what most people ask me, is about going home. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because my wife has to get her pension, so she needs to work basically until she retires. They retire very early here anyway. It's not, you haven't got to go up to 65, Back in Europe, of course, I have a father who's he's not elderly. He still drives and he's still full of life, but he's getting older. And I do, lucky enough, have another house in Europe. So it's not like I've sold everything, because when I come here, you give everything up. If I had to go back to the UK now, what the hell would I do? I mean, probably too old to get a mortgage, so I'd have to rent, so that's dead money, and then you've got to retire. So this is the crux, this is what we're getting at, this is the balance. You can pack your job in, you can travel the world, and you can enjoy yourself. It's once you're out of the rat race, once you've sold your home, moved on, it's very difficult to come back and then jump back into a situation where you got your own home again. You got a job. For me, I'm quite confident that if I went back to Europe, my particular job that I've done in the past, there would be no problem in going back to that type of job because it was unique. It's not about so much the money. The money we earn gives you a good life, far better than it would in the UK. Far better. You get more for your money, basically. My job as working in a university, the plus side is this: I get to do the hobbies that I want to do. I get the time to myself. I only work mornings, 4 mornings, and I get paid for all the holidays, all the school holidays. So 4 weeks in the Spring Festival, a week off in May, and then I get the 7 weeks off for the summer holidays, and I get paid for those holidays. That allows us to travel. Without this type of job, there'd be absolutely no way that I could travel. Or we could travel, sorry, not me. So that's the bonus. Reasonable wage and the ability to enjoy life. You know, eventually in a year or so time, pack your job in, and then eventually go back. If I'm to be honest, if I'm to speak in earnest, I would say it doesn't actually fill me full of thrills. Doing this or working this kind of job and these kind of hours, and the level of, what was I saying? Not the level, but the good life. Yeah, the good life. 40 hours a week. Man. 40 hours a week. And it does cross my mind to think that, you know, am I being selfish by staying here? I don't know. If I go back to Europe, you know, am I going to do the same thing as I do? How I go back to Europe, the euphoria, going back home, getting a job, and then after a couple of months, then that resentment, you know, thinking when you're sat there looking out the window on a rainy, cold day. And it does happen. Lots of people who've gone back. My friend John Smith, he went back. He was here about the same now, but he was here a long time. And eventually, even he got the call in. Everybody gets the call in. The reasons to go back, that you could stay in this country for so long, but you do get the call in. Going back, and we talk about culture shock, that we have the complete reverse of turning up here, living in this country for the first 6 months was an incredible journey through all the different types of emotion. Then, when you go back to the West, it's the same thing. I found myself in the airport looking around, thinking, wow, us white people, we're really strange looking. All different shapes and sizes, different coloured hair, and as my wife stopped staring. So it was. And then you get back, and the key thing is that you can understand what everybody's saying and talking about, and how polite people are. You know, it's always a courteous, you know, if you run your trolley down the aisle, oh, excuse me, oh, I'm sorry, and all this. Quite strange. So you're very switched on, very attentive to all the things that are being said around you. And yes, it is a culture shock. All those things that you want to try. The fad for food is gone now. I don't have that fascination for baked beans and sausages and bacon like I used to. Go back and then for a couple of weeks eat nothing, all the junk food, all the stuff that you really enjoyed. Now as I'm getting older, I gotta be a bit more conservative in what I eat. So when I go back, now it's the boring thing of salads and things. But yes, the availability of food and cakes, man. When you go back and you go into the supermarket and you see all those different types of cakes. But anyway, there you go. So culture shock happens in reverse. And the ability to talk to someone, or the conversation, talking to someone, having a full-on conversation that both in terminology you can use slang and idioms and those types of things that you can't normally use whilst you're here speaking English. And the fascinating thing also is, depending on which part of the country, of course, Ireland or England, sometimes I have to ask people to slow down. I don't understand what they're saying, which is quite ironic, as my wife points out that you are English after all. But I don't understand. They talk too fast, and the regional dialects as well. Some are very difficult to understand. We talked about the honeymoon period. The honeymoon period, when you go back, touching on that subject again, it's the same thing. You go back excited for the first couple of weeks, and then you settle into a groove quicker, obviously, than you do if you're living in a foreign country. So it doesn't have that impact. You don't have that resentment period that you go through. You just arrive back, you're astonished by all the ability to understand what people are saying. You can read everything. You can deal with things as well. Electricity bills, phone, getting a SIM card, all those things that here it's tougher to do. Lots of tea. But don't worry, even living here, Tetley Tea, PG Tips, everything is available here, because when we first arrived, it was more challenging. Only a few shops actually held sort of Western food, because when you first arrive here, you tend to sort of crave all the foods you miss, like your baked beans, your sausages, really weird when I come to think, and bread. Now, all those things are available now. I don't buy baked beans because I don't enjoy baked beans anymore. God, I don't even like them anymore. They're salty as hell. No, it's weird how your taste buds change as well. Quite happy to go back, but the danger is, of course, when you go back, I'm happy, but will my wife be happy to go back? We live in a very rural area. It's not like you can just pop out, walk down the road and go to the shops. We don't live in that sort of area, so you need a vehicle. She definitely needs to drive, so her challenge will be when we go back that she'll have to get a driving license and try and pass her test. It's just the nature of the beast. That's where we live. We need that. You need that transport to get around. So contemplate, to summarize, eventually, yes, it's good to travel. Yes, it's good to enjoy your life. You hop off the bandwagon whilst everybody else is working, and you travel and you enjoy yourself, that most people do when they retire. The only thing you're doing yours a bit quicker. There is a drawback to that, because like I mentioned before, people see out their jobs, they retire, they collect their pension, and then they start to travel. For me, for lots of people like-minded expats, we have sort of maintained our sort of national insurance and contributions, even though we haven't been in the UK. We still paid into the system. Pensions and things are still running, so it still costs money, even though you're not in the country. The only thing you don't pay is tax, of course. So there you go. You are semi-retired now. When you reach before your retirement age, you may have to work again a bit more to contribute a bit more insurance to the system, and then you retire. But when you retire, what do you do then? You're ahead of the game. As long as you can travel and without pandemics, there'll always be an excuse to get on a plane and travel somewhere. Just thought I'd put my thoughts out there, and anybody else who's living in a different country or thinking about moving to a different country, there's lots to think about. It's not all suntan lotion. Speaking of suntan lotion, even though we're in the tropics, never go out in the sunshine. So, I thought I'd throw that anecdote at the end, that all those people who rush off for their 2-week holiday down to Spain or Tenerife or Balearic Islands, of course. No. When you live in the sun, you stay away from the sun. When you don't get the sun, you lay out in the sun. Anyway, good for now. Bye.